Hey, YouTube and my future self. How's it going? It is Will here. And today we're sitting outside of the beautiful George Washington Memorial Bridge in Washington, D.C. And today I wanted to take some time to record a video about 3 books that have changed my life, the April 2025 edition. So as you guys know, on this YouTube channel, I've taken a goal to read 12 books this year. These are going to be a combination of 10 nonfiction books and 2 fiction books. And this kind of serves as like the midway check-in point where up to this point, I've read 3 books to completion. One of which is kind of more of a daily book. The other ones are complete, and I'm actively taking on more books to read. Now, reading is super important to me, and I kind of fell in love with reading last year, and I feel that it broadens the horizons, allows you to kind of think about things a little bit differently, and always stay continuously learning, as it was something that was kind of passed down to me as a trait from my father. So the purpose of this video is to kind of talk about those 3 books and dive into it. So with that being said, the 3 books that we're going to be talking about today are going to be Do Hard Things by Steve Magness, which is a book that kind of challenges the perception of toughness and what that means in our lives. The second one is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, which is basically the kind of Bible of value investing. There's lessons in the book that don't actually have to just be for people that are interested in finance. There's a lot more to the book, and I think it actually helps develop some pretty great mindsets around how people think about information that is given to them and processed. And the last one is actually going to be the Daily Stoic. And so this is the book that I was kind of hinting at. This one is a bit more of a fun read. It's kind of every day there's a different quote by, Marcus Aurelius or a philosopher of some sort that, they post the quote, and then the author, Ryan Holiday, kind of does a little bit of a debrief on it and kind of gives you some food for thought on how you can take the knowledge from these people and apply it to your everyday life. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the first book that I want to talk about. So the first book is called Do Hard Things by Steve Magness. And I picked up this book because I was in a Barnes & Noble. I was walking around and I saw the book. It said Do Hard Things. And it was kind of, it just kind of stood out to me. I'm not entirely sure why. I've read a lot of self-development books over the years, things by David Goggins, Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk, etc. And so I found that a lot of this book was kind of the same old that you get from those books. However, I do think some of the better things that I took away from this book was really that there is an importance to embrace pain and discomfort if you want to achieve really, really incredible things. And, that's not the easiest thing to kind of hear and digest, because that is a lot easier said than done. The thing that the book talks a ton about is like coaches, and how coaches in different sports and in performance running can be extremely intense on the people that they are training. And that often can lead to burnout. It can lead to dissatisfaction from the coaches. But ultimately, some of those people that get pushed super hard in those kind of environments end up being superstars. Now, the book does talk a lot about how some of these coaches that have this like my way is the highway, very, very strict attitude towards how coaching works end up setting those people up for failure, and that there's kind of a specific way that you can help people find and channel toughness as a way to really succeed. But I think the thing that, I kind of take away from this book is that if you really want to do something incredible with your life, or, stand out amongst other people, it is not going to be easy. And in fact, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Whiplash, but I kind of draw a lot of parallels from this book to the movie Whiplash, where, I'm not very good with actors, but you have this kind of drummer guy who is really, really, he wants to be this phenomenal drummer, and and I'm talking about like playing the drums. He wants to play the drums in this band with this specific director, and this music director is kind of known for being, super tough on his students. And so you kind of see this director give the student an opportunity to kind of come along and join the band, but the director does not hold back. He is very mean to the student. He will make him practice harder than anyone else. There's kind of movies and clips, there's clips in the movie of Miles Teller, the actor's hand starting to bleed because of how much he is practicing. And then it kind of, at the end of the movie, comes to this, massive realization moment where the student is kind of basically pushing back on the director, and because the director channeled so much anger in him, he goes out and kind of says, screw you, director, I'm going to show you what I got. And he ended up becoming an incredible drummer in this movie. And so this book draws a lot of parallels to that movie for me, because it goes to show that the really achieving incredible things is not easy. And another thing that this book did for me is it introduced running into my personal life, and I'll make a video kind of about health and fitness and my journey with that in the future. But But the thing that I want to kind of point out is like, throughout my entire life, running is something that I just assumed I wouldn't be able to do. When I was in high school, I was, 380 pounds. I definitely had no business being, someone that could run, a couple hundred feet, let alone a mile. And this book used performance running as a kind of analogy to a lot of the things that it was talking about. And kind of Steve Magness's personal life has a lot to do with running. And so when I kind of was reading this book and I was, kind of listening to these stories about how these performance runners were doing their stuff, I was like, oh, there's actually some things in here that I didn't realize people do when they're running, obviously, because I've never, really ran in my life or tried to. And so I as a part of my gym routine, kind of incorporated running into my routine. And it actually, did a few things for me. One, it kind of showed me that I can accomplish something that I never thought I could accomplish, which was, super, super life-changing. The second one is it kind of, I go to the gym in the morning. And so starting the day with running was easily a lot harder than working in Excel spreadsheets or having meetings with people at work or anything like that. And so I kind of set my morning off to this like, hey, I have this challenge, and then I've accomplished this challenge, and then everything else becomes so much easier. So a lot of the things, this book was a great reminder about embracing discomfort, because not everything is going to be easy. And if you really, really want to accomplish great things, things are going to be difficult, and embrace the difficulty, because that's how you learn, that's how you grow, and that's ultimately how you kind of develop the things that you want to develop over time. And then the other one is it introduced running to my life, and that's been a lot of fun. I've lost a lot of weight. I've probably become a lot healthier because of it. My energy is up, all sorts of stuff. And so by reading this book, I actually kind of fell in love with running when I actually, would say for the former 21 years of my life, absolutely just hated running. So that's the first one. That's going to be Do Hard Things by Steve Magness. Now, the second one is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. Now, when I first got into personal finance several years ago, when I was 18, this was a kind of a book that every YouTuber that I watched would have talked about. This, The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. You have to read that book, because it teaches you all sorts of stuff about investing and how you value invest and all sorts of stuff like that. And, like most people, when I was 18 and got access to some brokerage accounts, I thought I was smarter than everyone else and started to pick individual stocks, not doing my research, kind of high level. Oh, I think this company will probably do well in the future. And kind of mixed results. Some did really, really well. Some did not do really well. And when I first started investing, it was during COVID, and pretty much anything I would buy would increase in value. And so I tried, throughout that time to keep a level head and be like, this is not normal. But here I am kind of four years later from when I first started buying stocks, reading The Intelligent Investor. And I wish I had kind of read this book at the jump of doing that, because I feel like some of the lessons that I learned from owning stocks and reading other books are found in this book, and could have been found a lot earlier, maybe avoided some emotional roller coasters and loss probably. But The Intelligent Investor is really an excellent book about business and how businesses operate, how to value companies, and really how to think critically about the things that you're investing in, and kind of creating a mindset of like trust but verify, I would say, if you've ever heard that saying. And the book is phenomenal for a few reasons. First of all, the thing that I think is the most important takeaway is it kind of starts off, in the earlier chapters, making the point that like, you're not smarter than the average person. I am not smarter than the average person. The people that work on Wall Street have access to much more information than the layperson, much faster tools, much better, ways of doing research, etc. And so it's kind of silly to think that you as an individual, me as an individual, would have any chance at beating the stock market at its own game. It also introduces the concept of Mr. Market, which is kind of the nickname that Benjamin Graham attributes to the stock market, and how the Mr. Market doesn't care about your emotions, doesn't care about most results, and so it just constantly fluctuates. And so if you sit there and pay attention to it, or you try and day trade, you're honestly just setting yourself up for disaster. And so there's a lot of elements of this book that kind of say, hey, you're no smarter than the next guy. Take the passive approach. Index funds and ETFs are the place to be at. And, you can really make investing simple and boring the way it's supposed to be. And so if you kind of do that, you actually save yourself a lot of effort. And I will say, in my personal experience, I had two stock portfolios that I kind of set up when I was 18. The first one was my individual stock account, to which I picked, 10 to 15 companies and said, hey, I like these companies. I think these are future technology that will probably be around. And so I'm going to, pick these companies set a 5-year target and I will not sell them or anything. And, I think the year-to-date returns on that entire portfolio were like 46% or something. Gain of my initial principal at the 5-year mark, which is, fine or whatever. There's definitely some losses in there. And if you were to look at it on like a yearly basis, it would definitely not be as spectacular. But then the kind of counterfactual to that is at the same time, I set up a Roth IRA account and a 401k account that was solely invested in the S&P 500. And over the same 5-year period, the S&P 500 account, its principal that was contributed was up 96%. And so that goes to show that, even me, someone who works in finance, someone who spent a ton of time putting research and into books and other media and content for this stuff, I'm no smarter than the S&P 500 itself. And so the Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham was super helpful to kind of look at that time horizon now that I've been investing for a while and say, yep, you know what? I think index funds are probably going to be the way of the world for me. Stay out of the day trading, stay out of the trying to time the market. It's all pointless and it really will just cause you a lot of headache. So we talk a lot about personal finance on this YouTube channel. And so if you're not, index funds are a great way to start. We'll talk about those more in the future. And I think that's going to be, kind of my future path is index funds and chill, I guess is the way forward there. The other thing that I found really interesting about this book is kind of more the how do you value companies and kind of the trust but verify element of companies. And so I see this a lot in my personal life with work. You hear a lot about this in the news. I'll give a second for this plane to kind of go by. But the kind of trust but verify thing that I would take away here is there's a chapter in The Intelligent Investor that goes into accounting footnotes that you would see in a company's annual report or 10K. And, you might be thinking, oh, accounting notes, like boring. But here's the interesting thing. Companies are subject to certain rules and regulations when they file, annual reports or financial reports. And accounting notes can be used to kind of manipulate those reports or adjust those earnings figures that are published in the annual reports and kind of basically be used to manipulate the information that is actually being presented. And so over time, this has gotten a lot better, I think, because the book is quite dated. It's from the early 1900s. There's several editions of the book. Cases like Enron, were following this book, and the kind of the editor's notes kind of go into some of these cases where Enron and Theranos and other scandals that have used accounting tricks are much more prevalent. However, it is kind of a good takeaway because you see this in business a lot. And in my work, I have seen where people will use pro forma statements, they will use kind of like management reports, etc. And a lot of these management reports and pro forma results are kind of taking a step back from the generally accepted accounting principles and displaying financial results in a way that you normally wouldn't. Now, there is some upside to this, and there is some valid reason for concern, or there is a valid reason to do those things in certain circumstances. However, it was really interesting because at the direct time of me reading this book, something was happening at work where me and my team basically were like, hey, this method of what we're doing here doesn't actually make sense based on the way that we got approval for this in the past. And this is actually just manipulating both our current and future results on operating margin. If we display the results this way, I think we should use the more realistic view, which shows, our current state is a lot worse than it actually is, versus the other approach, which would have showed much rosier results in the current state at the expense of, diminished operating margins and returns in the future. And so this, the Intelligent Investor is extremely applicable to the work that I do as a finance analyst. It was super helpful to kind of read about different ways that depreciation and capital expenditures work and how accounting across three different three different financial statements work. And so if you're kind of looking to get a little bit deeper into the business side or the finance side, I think The Intelligent Investor is definitely an excellent book to pick up. And if you are looking to do any investing, I would honestly say it's probably the first book you should read before you purchase any stock. So that's The Intelligent Investor. Now, the last one is going to be The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. Now, this one, I haven't read this book to completion, as I kind of mentioned. And the main reason is because this book is actually more giving you a daily quote to read. Each page in the book has a date that you kind of open up to and are supposed to read on that day, and it gives you a little quote and testimony, and some thoughts to start the day with. And I've really liked this book. I kind of read it before I go to work after I've come back from the gym, and it's super helpful to. I'd say the main takeaways are to be humble, remember your values, and stay true to those values. I've found that over the past couple of years of things changing in my life, kind of moving from living with my parents, moving across the country, getting really cool opportunities, and really having complete lifestyle change in a short couple of years. I've seen my values change. I have seen my opinions change. I have seen myself in circumstances where ego gets the best of me, etc. And this is something that I've talked about with my friends, and I kind of wanted something to kind of help me stay true to myself. And I would say the Daily Stoic is a great book that does that. Some of the best things in it is talking about how Marcus Aurelius, when he would speak to the Roman Empire, would try to be a man of few words, because there wasn't a whole lot of point in trying to come off as something that you're not. If he didn't want to speak that many words and he had something important to say, he would try and say it in a concise way, in a way that people would understand, and not overcomplicate it with super large words or anything like that. And so the really interesting thing here is that you can the people often get up and get too mixed into hey, I need to show off, hey, I need to do this, hey, I need to do that, I need to impress these people, etc. And this book does a great job through kind of some of the different elements of it in the quotes, saying, nope, remember, we're all human beings. There's a way to which you can operate where you're nice and kind to everyone in this world, and stay true to yourself, stay humble, learn, stay curious. You don't know everything, etc. And so the book is a really great job for me to stay grounded, I think, and remember that we're all human beings. And I have found a lot of value in that. And every day where I read the book and kind of wake up and start my morning with a quote from it, it feels like there's something to learn and something to think about throughout the day. So those were the 3 books that have changed my life up to this point in April 2025. The first one being Do Hard Things by Steve Magness. The second one, The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. And the third one, The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. If you're interested in checking out the books yourself, the link to my reading list is in the description. And if you're looking for someone to talk to you about career, finance, lifestyle, or travel, feel free to reach out to me at will@jenkinswill.com. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you. See you all in the next one. See you guys.